Life in our quiet suburban town was supposed to be simple, uncomplicated, a place where everyone knew each other, where kids played on the streets until the streetlights flickered on, and where families were close-knit. It was the kind of town where people felt safe, where they believed in the sanctity of marriage and the stability of family life. I'm Mark, a 45-year-old IT professional. I've been married to Jenny for nearly 2 decades. We don't have any kids of our own, but Jenny brought 2 daughters from her previous marriage into ours, Megan and Lily, now 17 and 15. Over the years, I've come to love them as my own. We've built a life together in this quiet town, in a comfortable home that echoed with laughter and shared dreams. Our lives were interwoven with routines: weekday breakfasts, family movie nights, Sunday barbecues, and late-night talks that made me believe our bond was unbreakable. Jenny was always the more social one, full of life and charm. She worked part-time at a local boutique and had a close circle of friends. Her outgoing nature was one of the things I loved most about her. I, on the other hand, was more reserved, preferring the solace of our home after long hours at work. Despite our differences, we balanced each other out, or so I thought. Our neighborhood was typical, with rows of similar houses and well-kept lawns. We had our set of friends, our weekend barbecues, and a routine that felt comforting in its predictability. I never imagined that underneath the veneer of our seemingly perfect life, a storm was brewing, one that would shatter everything I held dear. It started with subtle changes, so subtle I almost missed them. Jenny had always been meticulous about her appearance, but lately, she'd taken it up a notch. Her wardrobe had a few new additions, clothes that were more suited for a night out than a trip to the grocery store. She started wearing perfume more often, the expensive kind she usually saved for special occasions. I noticed these things but dismissed them, thinking she was simply trying to feel good about herself. Then there were the late-night texts. Jenny had a close group of friends, so it wasn't unusual for her to chat with them in the evenings. But her phone seemed to buzz more frequently, her laughter more guarded. She'd quickly glance at the screen and tuck her phone away, as if she didn't want me to see. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd give vague answers, always quick to change the subject. Her behavior at home shifted too. Our once lively conversations dwindled, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. Jenny would snap at me over the smallest things, her patience worn thin. It felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying to avoid triggering her anger. Our intimacy suffered as well. Nights we used to spend wrapped in each other's arms became nights I spent alone in bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering where things had gone wrong. One night, Jenny said she was going out with her friends from work. It wasn't unusual. She often met them for drinks. But this time, something felt off. She spent an unusually long time getting ready, choosing her outfit with the kind of care she hadn't shown in years. When she finally left, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just meeting friends. I tried to ignore my growing suspicions, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. After all, we'd been through so much together. Surely she wouldn't throw it all away. But the signs were there, glaring at me, impossible to ignore. I started paying closer attention, noticing more and more inconsistencies in her stories. She'd come home late, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. Her excuses became flimsier, her explanations more convoluted. One evening, while she was in the shower, I saw her phone on the nightstand. It buzzed with a new message, the screen lighting up with a name I didn't recognize. Heartthrob. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to grab the phone, to read the messages and confirm my worst fears. But another part of me, the part that still clung to the hope that this was all a misunderstanding, held back. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband who spies on his wife. So I left the phone where it was, but the seed of doubt had been planted, growing into a gnawing suspicion that I couldn't shake. Over the next few days, I found myself obsessing over every detail, every interaction. I started keeping track of her movements, her conversations, looking for any clue that would either confirm or dispel my fears. Each day, my heart grew heavier with the weight of what I might find. The Jenny I thought I knew, the woman I loved, seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a stranger I couldn't trust. The final straw came one Saturday afternoon. Jenny had gone out for a girls' day with her friends, leaving me alone at home. I was tidying up the living room when I found a receipt from a fancy restaurant tucked between the couch cushions. The date on the receipt matched one of her supposed nights out with friends. My blood ran cold as I stared at the evidence, the truth starting to become undeniable. She was lying to me, and I needed to know why. Determined to uncover the truth, I devised a plan. The next time Jenny said she was going out, I would follow her. It felt wrong, like I was betraying her privacy, but the nagging doubts and the evidence I had found left me no choice. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. A week later, the opportunity arose. Jenny told me she was going out for a late dinner with her friends. She dressed up, looking stunning in a way that made my heart ache with longing and suspicion. As soon as she left, I grabbed my keys and followed her, keeping a safe distance so she wouldn't notice. She drove across town to a part of the city we rarely visited. I watched as she parked in front of an upscale restaurant, the same one from the receipt I had found. My heart pounded in my chest as I saw her meet a man outside. He wasn't anyone I recognized, but the way he greeted her, his hand resting on the small of her back, his lips brushing her cheek, left no room for doubt. This wasn't just a friend. I parked my car and watched them through the restaurant's large windows. They sat at a secluded table, leaning in close, their conversation animated and intimate. The man reached across the table to hold her hand, and she didn't pull away. My stomach churned with a mix of anger and heartbreak. The evidence was right in front of me, undeniable and shattering. I couldn't sit there and watch any longer. I needed to confront her, to hear her admit to the betrayal. I stormed into the restaurant, my anger fueling every step. When I reached their table, Jenny's eyes widened in shock and fear. "Mark, what are you doing here?" she stammered, pulling her hand away from the man's. "I should be asking you that," I shot back, my voice trembling with rage. "Who is he, Jenny? And don't lie to me." The man looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "Maybe I should go," he muttered, starting to rise from his seat. "No, you stay," I snapped. "I want to hear this from both of you." Jenny looked down, her face flushed with guilt. "Mark, Save it," I interrupted. "I want the truth. How long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the man for support. He looked away, unwilling to meet my gaze. "About 6 months," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deceit, and betrayal. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. "Why, Jenny? Why would you do this to us?" She looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. I was lonely, Mark. You're always working, always tired. I needed someone to talk to, someone who made me feel alive." Her words stung, but they didn't justify her actions. "So you decided to have an affair, to destroy our family because you were lonely?" "It wasn't like that," she pleaded. "I never meant to hurt you." I turned to the man, who had remained silent throughout our exchange. "And you? Did you know she was married? That she had a family?" He nodded, his expression one of regret. "Yes, I knew. But it's not as simple as you think. We care about each other." "Care about each other?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You don't destroy a family for someone you care about." This is betrayal, plain and simple. The restaurant staff began to take notice, and I realized we were causing a scene. I didn't care. Let them watch. Let them see the destruction of my marriage laid bare. I turned back to Jenny, my voice cold and hard. "We're done. I can't stay in a marriage built on lies. I'll be filing for divorce." Her tears fell freely now, but I felt no sympathy. This was her doing, her choice. I walked out of the restaurant, leaving her and her lover behind. The night air was cool, but it did nothing to numb the pain coursing through me. I drove home in a daze, the reality of my broken marriage settling in. When I got home, I sat in the darkened living room, the weight of the evening pressing down on me. Our home, once a place of love and laughter, now felt cold and empty. I knew that the road ahead would be long and painful, but there was no turning back. The truth was out, and there was no undoing the damage that had been done. The next morning, Jenny came home. I heard the door open and close softly, her footsteps tentative as she approached. I stayed seated in the living room, staring blankly at the photos on the wall. snapshots of happier times that now felt like cruel reminders of what I'd lost. Mark? Her voice was soft, almost pleading. Can we talk? I turned to face her, my expression cold. Talk? Now you want to talk? After everything? She flinched at my tone but continued. I know I hurt you. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to break our family apart. Then why did you? I snapped, unable to contain my anger. Why would you throw away everything we had? Jenny took a deep breath, her eyes welling up with tears. I told you I was lonely. I felt neglected, unimportant. Chris made me feel alive again, like I mattered. Chris? I echoed, my voice dripping with contempt. Is that his name? The man you've been sneaking around with for 6 months? She nodded, looking down at her hands. Yes, but it wasn't just about sex. We connected on a deeper level. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A deeper level? You think that justifies what you did? You think that makes it okay to destroy our marriage? No, it doesn't, she admitted, her voice breaking. But it happened, and I can't change that. I wish I could take it all back. But you can't, I said harshly. You made your choices. You decided to lie, to cheat. You've shattered any trust I had in you. She sobbed, her shoulders shaking. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you, Mark. Please, let's try to work through this, for the girls' sake. Our daughters, Megan and Lily, had been staying at a friend's house the previous night. They were unaware of the storm brewing in our home, the devastation that was about to hit them. The thought of them, innocent and unaware, tugged at my heart. They didn't deserve this. I'm not sure that's possible, I said, my voice softening slightly. How can I trust you again, knowing what you've done? I'll do anything, she pleaded. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. Just don't throw away what we've built. Don't let this mistake define us. I shook my head, the pain of betrayal still too raw. A mistake? This wasn't a one-time slip, Jenny. This was a calculated, ongoing affair. You don't accidentally fall into someone else's bed for 6 months. She was about to respond when the front door opened and our daughters walked in, their cheerful voices filling the room. They stopped short when they saw us, sensing the tension. What's going on? Megan asked, her eyes darting between us. I glanced at Jenny, silently asking how we should handle this. She took a deep breath and knelt down to their level, her voice gentle but shaky. Girls, we need to talk. There's something you need to know. As Jenny explained the situation in the gentlest terms possible, I watched our daughters' faces change from confusion to shock to tears. Their world was crumbling around them, and there was nothing I could do to shield them from the pain. Lily started crying first, her small body shaking with sobs. Megan stood there frozen, her eyes wide and filled with hurt. Why, Mom? She whispered. Why did you do this? Jenny reached out to them, but they stepped back, turning to me instead. I gathered them in my arms, holding them close as they cried. It's going to be okay, I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. Jenny stood there, her face etched with anguish. I'm so sorry, she said, but the words felt hollow, insufficient to mend the broken hearts in our family. The rest of the day was a blur of emotions. We tried to explain things to the girls without getting into too many details, but their trust in their mother was shattered. They stayed close to me, their tears and questions a constant reminder of the destruction Jenny's affair had caused. That evening, once the girls were asleep, Jenny and I sat down to talk again. I know you're hurt, she said quietly. But I still love you, Mark. I want to make this right. I looked at her, the woman I had loved for so many years, and saw a stranger. I don't know if that's possible, I admitted. I don't know if I can ever get past this. We can try, she insisted, her eyes pleading. Please give us a chance. I need time, I said finally. Time to think, to process all of this. Right now, I can't make any promises. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Just know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. As I lay in bed that night, my mind raced with conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, sadness, and a small flicker of hope that maybe, Just maybe we could find a way through this. But deep down, I knew that our lives would never be the same. The trust we had was shattered, and no amount of apologies could piece it back together. The days that followed were torturous. Jenny tried to make amends, but her efforts felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the anger and hurt that had taken root in my heart. I saw her differently now, through a lens of betrayal that tainted every interaction. The more I thought about her affair, the more my anger grew, festering into a desire for revenge. I wanted her to feel the pain she had caused me, to understand the depth of my suffering. One evening, while I was sitting alone in the living room, an idea began to form in my mind. I knew it was petty, vindictive even, but I couldn't help it. I wanted her to pay. I started gathering evidence, every text, every email, every photograph I could find. I wanted a clear, undeniable record of her infidelity. A week later, I had everything I needed. Armed with this evidence, I contacted Chris' wife. Her name was Laura, and she had no idea about the affair. When I called her, my heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anticipation and guilt gnawing at me. "Hello?" Laura's voice was warm, unsuspecting. "Hi, Laura. My name is Mark. I know this might come as a shock, but I need to talk to you about your husband, Chris, and my wife, Jenny." There was a pause, and I could hear the confusion and worry in her voice. "What about them?" I took a deep breath and began explaining everything, sparing no detail. The silence on the other end of the line grew heavier with each passing moment. When I finished, Laura was quiet for a long time before she finally spoke, her voice trembling. "I can't believe this. I trusted him. I'm so sorry," I said, and I meant it. "I just thought you deserved to know the truth." After that call, I felt a grim satisfaction. It was a small victory, but it was something. I knew that Chris' life was about to be turned upside down, just like mine had been. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like a step toward justice. But I wasn't done. I wanted Jenny to face consequences, to feel the weight of her actions. I called her family and told them everything. Her parents, who had always been supportive of our marriage, were devastated. They called Jenny, demanding explanations, and the fallout was immediate. Jenny came home that evening, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. "How could you do this?" she shouted, her voice a mixture of anger and hurt. "You called my parents? You told them everything?" "They deserve to know," I replied coldly. "Just like Laura deserved to know the truth about Chris." "You're destroying my life!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Just like you destroyed ours," I shot back, my voice rising. "You think you can cheat and lie without any consequences? This is what you brought on yourself." Jenny collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I needed her to understand the magnitude of her betrayal. The next few days were chaotic. Jenny's parents came over trying to mediate, to find some way to salvage what was left of our marriage. But their presence only intensified the tension. They pleaded with me to forgive her, to give her another chance. But I couldn't. The wound was too deep, the betrayal too severe. Jenny's anger turned to desperation. She tried to seduce me, wearing the lingerie she knew I loved, trying to reignite the spark we once had, but her touch repulsed me. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was her with him. One night, as she attempted to get close to me again, I pushed her away, my voice filled with bitterness. "You wore that for him too, didn't you? Don't think you can just sweep this under the rug with a bit of sex." She flinched, stepping back as if I had slapped her. "Mark, please," she whispered. "I'm trying. I want to make this right." "Make it right?" I laughed, a harsh, hollow sound. "There's no making this right, Jenny. You shattered everything." In the midst of all this, I sought solace in my friends. They were my rock, supporting me through the darkest days. They had their own anger toward Jenny, having witnessed the toll her betrayal had taken on me. One of my closest friends, Paul, suggested something that I initially dismissed as too extreme. "Why don't you record her? Get her to admit everything on tape. It'll be useful if things get ugly in the divorce," he said. The idea simmered in my mind. It felt underhanded. But at the same time, it seemed like a way to protect myself, to ensure that the truth was undeniable. One evening, while Jenny and I were having yet another argument about her infidelity, I discreetly turned on my phone's voice recorder. "Why did you do it, Jenny?" I asked, my voice weary. "Just tell me the truth." She sighed. tears in her eyes. I was lonely, Mark. You were always working, always tired. I needed someone who made me feel alive. And that's your excuse? That justifies months of lying and cheating? No, it doesn't, she admitted. But I can't change what happened. I just want us to move past this. Her words were recorded, her confession a permanent mark of her betrayal. It was a small victory, but it gave me a sense of control in a situation where I felt powerless. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere at home grew more toxic. Jenny's attempts to win me back became more desperate, but my resolve only hardened. I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage. The trust was gone, replaced by a seething anger that wouldn't dissipate. One evening, after another futile argument, I sat down with Jenny and laid it all out. I've contacted a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. I want full custody of the girls. Her face crumpled and she started to sob. Mark, please, don't do this. Think of the girls. I am thinking of them, I said, my voice steady. They deserve better than this. They deserve parents who respect each other, who don't lie and cheat. The realization that our marriage was truly over seemed to hit her then. She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. If that's what you want, she whispered, her voice broken. I'll do whatever it takes to make it easier for the girls. I stood up, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. It's what we both need, I said softly. It's time to move on. As I walked away, leaving Jenny sobbing on the couch, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The path ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it. I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my life, and there was no turning back. The house felt eerily quiet in the days following my decision to file for divorce. Jenny moved around like a ghost, her usual energy replaced by a hollow sadness. The girls sensed the tension, but I assured them that things would be okay, even if I wasn't sure myself. One evening, Jenny approached me in the kitchen, her eyes red from crying. Mark, can we talk? Really talk? I nodded, gesturing for her to sit at the kitchen table. We sat across from each other, the space between us feeling like a chasm. What is it, Jenny? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. I know I've hurt you more than I can ever make up for. I know our marriage is over, but there are things I need to say. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. Go ahead. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, her voice shaky. About us, about what went wrong. I was wrong, Mark, so wrong. I let my loneliness and my selfish desires take over, and I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I remained silent, letting her speak. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued, tears streaming down her face. But I want you to know that I regret everything. I regret hurting you, and I regret what this has done to our family. I don't blame you for leaving. I don't blame you for wanting custody of the girls. You're a good father, and they need you. Her words were a mix of sorrow and acceptance, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimmer of the woman I had fallen in love with. I appreciate you saying that, I said quietly. But it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't fix the damage. I know, she whispered. I just wanted you to hear it from me. I'm sorry, Mark. Truly, deeply sorry. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Finally, I spoke. What happens next? She wiped her tears, trying to compose herself. I've been thinking about that too. I want to make this transition as smooth as possible for the girls. They deserve stability, and they need to know that we both love them. I nodded. I agree. We need to put them first, no matter how hard this is for us. Jenny reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it on mine. Mark, I know it's too late for us, but I want you to know that I'll always care about you. Despite everything, you've been a good husband, and you've given me so much. I'll always be grateful for that. Her touch felt strange, almost foreign, but I didn't pull away. I'll always care about you too, Jenny. We had good times, and I'll hold on to those memories. but we both need to move forward. She nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and acceptance. I understand. I just hope that someday we can find peace and maybe even be friends. Maybe, I said softly. But right now we need to focus on the girls and getting through this. Jenny squeezed my hand before letting go. You're right. We'll get through this, one step at a time. That night, I lay in bed, replaying our conversation in my mind. It was the closure I needed, a final acknowledgement of the end of our marriage. The anger and hurt were still there, but so was a sense of clarity. We were both ready to move on, to build new lives separate from the pain and betrayal. The next morning, we sat down with Megan and Lily, explaining as best we could what was happening. They cried, asking questions we didn't have all the answers to, but we reassured them that we both loved them and that we would always be there for them. Over the next few weeks, we began the process of untangling our lives. Jenny moved into the guest room, and we started discussing custody arrangements and division of assets. It was painful, but there was a strange sense of relief in the process, like a wound that was finally beginning to heal. One evening, as I was packing up some of my things, Jenny knocked on the door of our bedroom. Mark, there's one more thing I need to tell you. I looked up, seeing the seriousness in her eyes. What is it? She took a deep breath. I'm leaving town. I've decided to move back with my parents for a while. I need time to figure things out, and I think it's best for all of us if I'm not around. I was surprised, but I understood. Are you sure? She nodded. Yes, I need a fresh start, and so do you. I've already talked to the girls, and they're okay with it. I'll come back to visit, but for now, I think it's best if we have some distance. Okay, I said softly. If that's what you think is best. She smiled sadly. Thank you, Mark, for everything. I hope you find happiness again. I hope you do too, I replied. And with that, Jenny left. The house felt emptier without her, but it was a necessary step toward healing. The girls and I adjusted to our new normal, finding a rhythm that worked for us. It wasn't easy, but each day felt a little less heavy, a little more hopeful. As I moved forward, I held on to the belief that better days were ahead. The betrayal had scarred me, but it hadn't broken me. I was ready to rebuild, to find peace and happiness again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. The trial for our divorce proceedings came sooner than I expected. Despite our heartfelt conversations and the semblance of understanding we had reached, the reality of untangling our lives legally was a daunting task. Jenny and I both had our lawyers, and the courtroom became a battlefield where our broken marriage was dissected piece by piece. Walking into the courthouse that first day, I felt a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. I glanced around the room, taking in the faces of strangers who were about to bear witness to the most painful chapter of my life. Jenny sat on the other side, looking equally anxious, her eyes avoiding mine. This was it, the final step in ending what we had built together over the past 2 decades. Our lawyers presented our cases, each side trying to protect their client's interests. My lawyer, Marcia, was a fierce advocate. She brought forward the evidence I had collected, painting a clear picture of Jenny's infidelity. Her argument was straightforward. Jenny's betrayal had led to the breakdown of our marriage, and I deserved full custody of Megan and Lily to provide them with the stability they needed. Jenny's lawyer, on the other hand, tried to downplay her actions, focusing instead on her role as a mother. They argued that despite her mistakes, Jenny had always been a loving and attentive mother, and she deserved to remain a significant part of the girls' lives. The judge listened carefully, weighing the evidence and testimonies. It was a grueling process, each day in court feeling like an eternity. I watched as Jenny took the stand, tears streaming down her face as she admitted to her affair, expressing her regret and pleading for a chance to maintain a relationship with our daughters. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke honestly about the pain of betrayal, about the sleepless nights, and the impact on our family. I also talked about my love for Megan and Lily, about my commitment to being there for them, no matter what. The courtroom fell silent as I finished, the weight of my words hanging in the air. The judge called a recess, giving us all a moment to breathe and collect ourselves. During the break, I stepped outside to clear my head. The cool air was a welcome relief, a brief escape from the tension inside. As I stood there, lost in thought, Jenny approached me. "Mark," she said softly, "can we talk?" I turned to face her, my emotions a tumultuous mix of anger, sadness, and a lingering affection for the woman I had once loved. "What is it, Jenny?" She looked down, wringing her hands. "I just wanted to say that no matter what happens in there, I'm sorry. I never wanted it to come to this." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "I know I've asked for forgiveness before," she continued, her voice trembling. "But I want you to know that I truly mean it. I hope that one day we can find a way to be civil for the girls' sake." "I hope so too," I replied quietly. "But right now, we need to focus on what's best for them." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I understand. I just wanted you to know how I feel." We stood there for a moment, the silence between us filled with the unspoken pain and regret of our broken relationship. Then, the bailiff called us back into the courtroom, and we returned to our seats, ready to face the final decision. The judge's verdict was fair and balanced. He acknowledged Jenny's role as a mother, but emphasized the need for stability and the impact of her actions on our family. In the end, I was granted primary custody of Megan and Lily, with Jenny receiving visitation rights. The division of assets was also fair, allowing both of us to move forward with a semblance of financial stability. As we left the courtroom, there was a sense of finality in the air. The legal battle was over, and now it was time to start the healing process. Jenny and I shared a brief, bittersweet hug, a silent acknowledgement of the journey we had been through together. The drive home was quiet. Megan and Lily sat in the back seat, their expressions a mix of relief and sadness. They were too young to fully understand the complexities of what had happened, but they knew that life would be different now. When we got home, I sat them down and talked to them about the future. I reassured them that despite the changes, we were still a family, and that both their mother and I loved them deeply. They clung to me, their trust and love giving me the strength to move forward. The next few weeks were about adjusting to our new normal. Jenny moved back in with her parents as she had planned, and I focused on creating a stable, loving environment for Megan and Lily. We established new routines, finding comfort in the predictability of everyday life. Jenny visited regularly, and while our interactions were strained at first, we gradually found a way to co-parent effectively. There were moments of tension, but also moments of cooperation and understanding. It wasn't easy, but we were committed to putting the girls first. One evening, after dropping the girls off at Jenny's for the weekend, I sat alone in the house, reflecting on the journey we had been through. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it was slowly being replaced by a sense of acceptance and hope. The future was uncertain, but I knew that we had taken the first steps toward healing and rebuilding our lives. As I sat there, I realized that while our marriage had ended, it wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could find happiness and fulfillment on my own terms. The journey ahead was daunting, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time. The first few months after the divorce were challenging. There were moments when the silence of the house felt overwhelming, a stark contrast to the life that once filled its rooms. But slowly, we started to find our footing. Megan and Lily adapted to the new routine, their resilience and strength inspiring me to do the same. I poured myself into my work and focused on being the best father I could be. The girls and I established new traditions, Friday night movie marathons, Sunday morning hikes, and impromptu baking sessions that left the kitchen a mess but filled the house with laughter. These moments became the foundation of our new life, a reminder that even in the face of loss, there was still joy to be found. As the weeks turned into months, I began to carve out time for myself. I reconnected with old friends, took up hobbies I had long neglected, and even started going to the gym regularly. The physical activity was a welcome release, a way to channel my emotions into something positive. One evening, while attending a neighborhood barbecue, I met Erin. She was new to the area, having recently moved in after her own divorce. We struck up a conversation, finding solace in our shared experiences. Erin was kind, thoughtful, and easy to talk to. Our initial friendship slowly blossomed into something more. Dating again after so many years was both exhilarating and terrifying. Erin understood my hesitations, and we took things slowly, respecting the pace that felt right for both of us. Our relationship brought a lightness back into my life that I hadn't realized I was missing. We enjoyed simple pleasures, walks in the park, dinners at cozy restaurants, and long conversations about anything and everything. Introducing Aaron to Megan and Lily was a significant step. I was nervous, unsure of how they would react, but Aaron's genuine warmth and kindness quickly won them over. They appreciated how she didn't try to replace their mother, but instead became a supportive and loving presence in their lives. Watching them bond with Aaron brought me immense joy and a sense of peace. As time went on, Jenny and I continued to co-parent effectively. Our interactions remained civil, and while we weren't friends, there was a mutual respect and understanding. The girls thrived in the stable environment we worked hard to provide, and seeing their happiness was the ultimate reward. Reflecting on my journey, I realized how far I had come. The betrayal that once consumed me had lost its power, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and hope. I had learned to value myself, to recognize my worth, and to prioritize my own happiness alongside that of my daughters. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Aaron, watching the sunset, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had taken unexpected turns, and the road had been rocky, but I had emerged stronger and more resilient. The future was no longer a daunting unknown, but a canvas filled with possibilities. Erin turned to me, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun. "You know, Mark, you've come a long way. I'm proud of you." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "Thank you, Erin. I couldn't have done it without you." She leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder. "We've both come a long way, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes us." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, I felt a sense of contentment that had eluded me for so long. The pain of the past had shaped me, but it didn't define me. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it held, with an open heart and a renewed spirit. The journey of rebuilding my life had been filled with challenges, but it had also been filled with growth, love, and unexpected joy. I had learned to navigate the complexities of betrayal, to find strength in vulnerability, and to cherish the moments of connection and happiness that made life truly worthwhile. With Erin by my side and my daughters thriving, I looked forward to the future with hope and optimism. The scars of the past would always be there, but they were a testament to my resilience and the journey that had led me to this point. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that I was capable of overcoming anything, and that happiness was not just a distant dream, but a reality I was living every day. Life, with all its twists and turns, had brought me to a place of peace and fulfillment. And as I embraced this new chapter, I knew that the best was yet to come.